Okay, we're up to the Mishnah on Daf Ayin Zayin Amid Aleph. I would say considerably easier than last night's share. Says the Mishnah, Ha'ish. So now we said that a man can go ahead and get divorced if his wife has certain woman. Now we have the reverse. Ha'ish nolda by woman, a man that he developed woman. We do not force him to go ahead and divorce her. In other words, as opposed to the man who could divorce his wife, we don't force him because of mumim to go ahead and get divorced. The that we don't force the issue is b'mumim kitana, when they're small mumim. If they're considerable, then we will force the issue, as we're going to see. Okay. Rabbi. Now, even though Taisus points out, near Larry, you would get a ksuba, even though he's being forced to divorce her, against his will, it still will be a ksuba. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Tani Noldu. Rabbi Yehuda says he developed mumim. Chia Barav Tani Hoyu. He had mumim. In other words, when they got married, they had mumim. Noldu. Mandiyama that they stay together when they develop. Hoyu. Certainly, then what? That when they got married and they were apparently there, certainly they would not have to get divorced. Because Savra Kivikibla. Right? Because what? Because she accepted it. In other words, when she got married, she knew what she was getting into because those women were there already. So Madach, if when they weren't there at the time of marriage and they developed, you stay together, certainly if they were there at the time of the marriage. However, Mandama Hoyu, that were there, Aval Noldu Loi. Why? But not because she could taina that whatever I accepted, but whatever what is developed, not. Tanan. In our Mishnah, that's when they stay together by mum ketanim. Aval mum gedolim koyfen aselahaitzi. Now Bishleim the man them noldu. Bishleim man the man who says that they developed. Hainu the shiny ben gedolim the ketanim. They could stay together by ketanim, but gedolim when they were developed, so what? Right? You can't. In other words, it makes sense. Noldu, right? Rabbi Shimon says, and if they're gedolim, guess what? So what noldu is ketanim? They stay together. Noldu, gedolim not. El lamandiyam ahoyu. The man she got married with mumim mali gedolim mali ketanim. Whatever she accepted, she could have it. Hasav of a kibla. So l'chayra, it's a kasha on Chia Barav, who said the lashon of Hayu. Because in other words, if they were there, why should she be able to get divorced? So whatever was there, she accepted it. Okay? Says Kasu said Hasavra v'kibla, and for the Gemara, Kasvura, she thought sheyachaylu lekabel. She thought of these mumim gedolim she'd be able to accept. Right? And now she can't accept it. In other words, you're right. Loit chiyabarav hoyu means she got married. She thought it was she could live with whatever handicap this person had, and then she decided that no, she can't. She gets a ksuba. Now, this is I think this is unbelievable. You hear this? So she gets married, right, to a guy who's a hinkadika guy. And she thinks that she could do it, and then she tries she can't. Now, I have a forensic accountant sitting over here says, I got a good scam going right over here right now. So you look at Taisus, guys, Heshi's thinking about, wow, I can make a few bucks over here. Taisus, this is what Taisus says, guys, the third Taisus down. Savrua ha'isa shani yachal kabel. Ktsas tema. I got a bit of an issue. Ktsas tema. I got a bit of an issue. The imkain that if she can go ahead get married in the condition where she has this handicap, and then somewhere along the line claim that, you know what, I'm good. Guess what? I can't take it. So she's going to leave and collect what? A ksuba. So as Mariam Kane, call Isha Tarim, she'll make a trick, Vitisiena, and she'll marry him. Kidei sheyitin lo ksuba. Shetaimer, she'll say, Eini yechayl kabel v'yigrishena. So in other words, Taisus is anticipating a scam. If you're telling me the woman can get married to a person with a handicap and say, you know what, I thought I could do it, but I can't. So she has a way of making money. She didn't collect the Kesuvos. Kesuvos was considered what the money was. And for the Gemara, in other words, it's not carte blanche across the board. She's going to have a Kesuvos. If Besdin has any inkling of any hanky-panky, right? Any inkling of something that's not kosher in Denmark, they'll say, "Oh, guess what? Bye-bye, nothing." Amazing. Chazal thinks of everything. You're not going to beat the system.
Because I thought I could handle a tall guy. I can't handle a tall guy. I can only handle a short guy.
That's not a mum. Let's see.
It's on the house.
Let's see what the mum gedolim are, Yankov. Let's see. It says Elohim mum gedolim pirish Gamliel kigoin nismis einai. He loses his eye, and now he's just got a socket there. Nikta yada, he loses an arm. Finish paraglai or a leg. His leg is broken. So those are cases of mum gedolim. We watch. She would be able to say, "Let Rabbi Shimon Gamliel get divorced." Itmar. Rav Yaakov Amar Rabbi Yochanan Halach Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Looks like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Rav Amar Rav Nachman Halach K'divrei Chachamim. Now the halach is like the Chachamim. Now, for the Gemara, Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi. Was it necessary for Rabbi Yochanan to say that the halach is like Shimon Gamliel? We have another psak from Rabbi Yochanan that would have Mimela automatically would have known the halach is like Shimon Gamliel. Why? Sheshana. Why? Amar Rav Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, b'chol makom sheshana Rab Shimon Gamliel b'mishnaseinu. Anytime Rab Shimon Gamliel appears in our Mishnah, halacha kamoso, with three exceptions. Those three places we're not going to go into now are three places where the halacha is not like him. Any other place, including our Mishnah by Mumim, the halacha is like him. So if Rabbi Yochanan said that statement, why is it necessary to paskin like Rosh Gamliel? The mailer the halacha is like that. It's not one of the three places. He says, Amaroy didn't believe Rabbi Yochanan. It's machlokes Amaroy and whether Rabbi Yochanan made that statement or not. In other words, the Manda Amar who said that Rabbi Yochanan paskins like Rosh Gamliel says that statement that the halacha is like Rosh Gamliel Mishnah Seinu was never said. So Mameli had a paskin that way. He had to tell us the halacha is like Rosh Gamliel because without that statement, we wouldn't know it. There's another statement that the halacha is always like him except those three places. No, he never made that statement. And therefore what? That's the din. Next Mishnah. It's a continuation of this Mishnah. The Elu shekoifnei seilahaitzi, and these are the ones where you would go ahead and force him to go ahead and get divorced. Mukach shchin. Now, they tight shchin is boils, like in Mitzrayim, the shchin. It's some disease of the skin that tashmish hamita is very, very hard. That it seems like a disease of the skin. Again, just mukashkin is mukashkin. Again, sometimes you try to give it a definitive name, it limits it. So I think it's much more than boils, much more than just having a boil, like a pimple of boil. It's much more than that. Ubal pelifis, we'll see what that is. Now, these are physical defects. Mukashkin and bal pelifis are physical aspects. Now, sometimes you can get divorced because a woman cannot deal with the guy's profession. Bahamikametz. Mekametz is profession, guys. He gathers dog excrement. That's his job. Now, I can imagine that being a pooper scooper is not, naturally something that, because he'll smell. So therefore you can get divorced. We're going to say that's a copper miner. The habursi is a tanner. All these are very smelly professions. Whether he had that profession before they got married, maybe that job came up after he got married. She could say, I thought, however, in other words, she got married. She thought she could accept the profession, even though she got married with this profession. At some point in time, she could say, you know what, I can't take it. And you would force the issue. You'd force the divorce. We would force her to accept him, with the exception of mukashkin. And there's the other cases, whether he suffered from polypus or those other jobs, those professions, you would not go ahead and force the issue. With the exception of mukashkin, there we would, because it causes his skin that Rashi says the tashmish causes his skin, it's very, very detrimental to him. So it's interesting. The reason you get divorced is not because of her. The reason you're getting divorced is because of him, because the tashmish amita is kashaloi. He was a tanner. Shemes, he died without children. He had a brother who was a tanner. Was in the family. She could say to the brother, she could say to him, your brother I was able to deal with, even though he, that profession, I can't deal with. There could be other factors. So in other words, we wouldn't force the yibum. My Baal Polipus, we said one of the physical the defects that you cause the divorce that you force is Polipus. Is reach hachoitim. It's a type of a smell from the nose. It's bad breath. Ravasi master the opposite, that Shmuel is the one who said it's bad breath. And he gave it the following simon. Shmuel a pasik pume mikula pirkin. Shmuel's mouth never stopped from learning, so Shmuel is the one who spoke about what? About the mouth, was speaking about bad breath. Again, that profession. Rashi says something interesting. He doesn't know what they used it for, right? Other people say it was, Rashi suggests it was used like some type of detergent. This they used it for hides, for skins, and then they used to use it for the tanning process. My mekamitz, Rabbi Yehuda, zeh mekamitz tzoyas klovim. He gathers the tzoya, the excrement of dogs. Mesidei mekamitz. You know what a mekamitz is? Zeh bursi. That's what. That's a tanner. Good. So how can you say that? Why? You, Rabbi Yehuda, are in a Moira. You say it's a gatherer of dog stuff. We have a brisa that says what? It's a tanner. So what do we do? Now, according to your reasoning, and our Mishnah should disprove you. Why? Because it says mekamitz. In other words, it says mekamitz and bursi. You're telling me we got three professions. We have a profession called mekamitz. We have a profession called what? Called bursi. That's the third one. And the second one, we have a profession called what? Is called mitzaref, the chayshes, right? So if you're telling me bursi is mekamitz, is one and three are the same. Obviously, they're different ones. You're saying there's three different professions. You're saying one and three are synonymous. You're saying that what the mekamitz is what is bursi. So you're asking a question of my Rabbi Yehuda. I got a Mishnah that obviously says that it's not bursi because it says it separately. So Bishleim Mastisa, that's the listed two like Kashai Knansa, Kambe bursi gadol, Kambe bursi cotton. In other words, you're right. It is a bursi, but it's a different type of bursi. One's a big one, one's a small one. El Rabbi Yehuda, like the Amar Rabbi Yehuda Kasha, it says mekamitz what is a bursi and not a gatherer of dog stuff. So it's machlokes tanoim. I got it. Rabbi Yehuda the Amari has a tana that goes according to him that mekamitz in fact is a person who gathers dog stuff. The Tanya mekamitz ze bursi yesh aimim ze mekamitz tzoyas kolavim. So Rabbi Yehuda has a tana who says that that's the job. The job is the gatherer of that stuff. Now this profession again, she can force a divorce. My mitzaref nechoshes. What does that mean? Rav Ashi Yom is chashle dude. They beat down the copper to make a pot. A dud is a pot, and it seems that process seems to be very smelly. The chemicals, reactions, the stuff must be very smelly. Rabbi Rav Hanu Amazeh, no, excuse me, someone who cuts the choshes from its source. It's a miner. Mikara means from the mountain, wherever the copper mine is. So I've never been to a copper mine, but I guess it must be very smelly.
They have their own shul in each line.
The coppersmiths had their own shul because they smelled. Very good. Baruch tells us that in the Gemara Megillah that the coppersmiths had their own shul because they were smelly. They used to have the different people. They used to have their own shuls. Yehuda, there was a shul for jet fans, but they never had a minyan. Says the Gemara. Very good. Amarav, Ha'omer, any son, veinim mefarnes. If a man tells his wife, listen, I'm not going to feed you, and I'm not going to take care of you. That's it. Goodbye. So Yaitsev, you think suba. So he leaves and you think suba. So also Rabbi Laza said, Amar, also Rabbi Laza Amar, the Shmaitzer Kamei de Shmuel. He said the sugya in front of Shmuel, Amar. So he said, Achsua Sari La Lazar, Achshakayfan Esel Lahaitzi. In other words, what are you saying that you should go ahead and achsu asari means feed him barley like a behemoth, right? Like in other words, it's he's telling him What are you getting divorced? Feed her. Don't force the divorce. If he doesn't want to feed her, don't get him divorced. Go ahead and feed her. Force him to feed her. So Rav who says you force the divorce, ain't adam dorim in nachish b'kvi. We had this before. A man doesn't live with a snake in a basket. In other words, if you're in a snake in a basket, you have to watch the snake all the time. If you take your mind off it for 1 second, it can bite you. So right now, you're going to force him to feed her. But again, what happens over time? He's not going to feed her. So therefore, says Rav, it's not an eitzah to force the force feeding. You go ahead and just get divorced. He saw the Reb Zera when Reb Zera went up to Eretz Yisrael. Ashchil Reb Binyamin Bar Yefes the Yosef Karmelam Shmei Reb Yochanan. This sugya about forcing, if she says any zonim in finance, you force the divorce. Amalei Ada Achsu Sorin LaLaza Bavel. Right, and this Elaza, what forced to feed in Bavel. I'm Rav Yudam Rav Asi Ema Ashin El Psulas. When we force divorce, it's usually by a psula instead of puzzle. Right. So I just forgot. I want to get the. Yankel. Anyway, so we force divorce. We force El Psulas. Says Rav. For psulas, for example, what are our sheduchim of psulas that we force the divorce? Kigon, alman l'kain gadol, we don't want them together. Divorce. A grusha v'chalutza l'kain hedyet. A grusha v'chalutza to a kain hedyet. Mamzeres and sinim Yisrael. Again, this is all about Yevam's fame. Bas Yisrael in the sin u'lamamzer. Aval nasa isha. If a man gets married to a woman, v'shah ima eseshanim, and if they stay together for 10 years, v'lo yolda, and she doesn't have a child. We do not force them to get divorced. You would force the divorce. Rav Tachlifa says you would force a woman and a man that are married for 10 years, you'd force divorce because he is mitzvah in period of review. Okay, we're going to speak about it soon, but I want to let's see it within the context of the Gemara. Why are we bringing this in? It's because we listed in our Mishnah, these are the ones we force the divorce, right? A person who suffers from mukashchin or pelusin or a different profession, but it doesn't say what a man who was together for 10 years, right? Doesn't mention anything about that. Our Mishnah says, these are the ones we force lahaitzi to get divorced. Mukashchin uba polifis. Now bishleim l'ravasi derabbanan ketani deraisa loy ketani. He only learned the Rabbanan, not the Deraisa. Peer review is the Deraisa. So Memelif, if you're going to get divorced because of bad breath or because of Mukashchin, certainly you're going to get divorced because of the lack of peer review. Ella L'Rav Tachlifa Rav Yimi says you do force the divorce. Listening nasa isha v'sha'ima esashanim v'layolda kaifin I say that why always not listed in our Mishnah. So Rav Nachman loy kasha habamili habeshuti. Our Mishnah was speaking about where we physically force the divorce. There's a lot of guys in the Torah of kfiyah. If a person doesn't want to keep a mitzvah, they physically go ahead and force them. So our Mishnah is discussing where we physically force you. Mashen came by if a person is together 10 years, we would verbally tell him to get divorced. So that's the difference. It's not included in the Mishnah because our Mishnah is only describing the physical force, and therefore what it's not included one that's non-physical, which is what merely. With words, the Eved won't be disciplined, right? Meaning, you could talk Heinz Morgan. The guy's not going to get divorced. In other words, you want something to get done. This is not for this day and age, but you got to beat him. Got to beat him, right? So Ella. So back to the original question: why is after 10 years not included in the Mishnah of Kfiyah? Why is it not included? You're both speaking when you force. In other words, you're going to force for mukashchin, and you're going to force for 10 years. We'll force it, but if she says it's okay, I'll stay with him. We'll let her stay with him. Over here with the 10 years, we wouldn't allow it. We wouldn't allow it. Good. So now that's the difference. The reason why it's not included in the Mishnah is because it's a different din. We'll force it. We'll force it by the mukashchin, and we'll force it by 10 years. However, by mukashchin, if she accepts it, she's okay. Mashen came over here by 10 years, it's not okay. because he's mitzvah in Pirivia. Now Mukashchin, the Fred Gemara Kasha, you're telling me Mukashchin is okay. How can you say that? Mukashchin, the Alpha Gav the Amra Havina Badei Leishafkin Allah. You won't let it nan. Chutzmi Mukashchin, with the exception of Mukashchin, if Nesha and Makasle, because it causes again he can't live with her. Vikatani Hasam, Ki Amra, Vikatani Hasam, Ki Amra, Vikatani. Question, and for the Gemara, Hasam and Mukashchin, Ki Amra Dairona Bahadei, Besade, I live with him and have Adis that we don't live together. Shafkin Allah will allow it. Hacha by Pir Berivya, Afagav the Amra Dayana Bahadei, Besade Lo Shafkin Allah. We will not go ahead and okay. So let's go through fair rice. What's the kasha? We have a list in the Mishnah of the Eilu Koifin. These are the ones that you're going to force a divorce. Someone who has someone has mukashchin, and someone has polyphis. Okay, we said please, bad breath, whatever, and certain professions. Okay, let's just stay with the mukashchin and okay, so let's keep mukashchin. Mukashchin, and you're not included in there. Later, chlifa is 10 years together. It's not. That's not included. We were looking for a chilik. The first chilik we tried was this is physical, this is verbal. It didn't work. Verbal doesn't work, so they're both physical. What's the difference? This physical and that physical. That in this physical mukashchin, if she wants to stay together, let them stay together. By period of let them stay together. For the Gemara mukashchin, we also will let them stay together. Back to the original question, right? And for the Gemara, no, there's still a difference. What's the difference? If she says, I'll have Adim to go ahead by mukashchin that we won't live together, we'll let them stay together. But 10 years, we won't let them stay together. That's the chiluk. That's the chiluk. Now, this din of 10 years is very interesting. First of all, there's a big machloikus about this 10 years. Does it mean outside of Eretz Yisrael or only in Eretz Yisrael? In the schus of Eretz Yisrael. If you're in Chutz La'aretz, it doesn't apply. Again, question. This din of 10 years, where do we learn it from? We learn from Avram Avinu. That Avram Avinu, after 10 years of being in Eretz Yisrael, right, then he took Hagar. So there are Rishonim that learned that it only applies in Eretz Yisrael. That outside of Eretz Yisrael doesn't apply. There are other Rishonim who say that no, it applies all over. Like why by Avram they said 10 years in Eretz Yisrael? Because Avram Daf was promised children, Lech Lecha in Eretz Yisrael. Lech Lecha, and then you'll go there, right? And then you'll be a Goy Gadol. But Enochinami, that was unique to Avram Avinu. But all of us, it applies to B'chol Makom, like Ashley's saying, Pir Rivya. Okay? Anyway, here's the halacha. This is, you would think from the whole Gemara that we just did, that a man would have to, after the Chayra ben Gershom would have to divorce his wife, right? And l'chayra, it's not so pashut. But if you look, this is the Perik Aleph in Eben Ezra, Hilchos Pirivya, right? And Ubizman Azeh, this is Siman Gimel, the lashon of the Ramah. Nagu shalei lakuf al zeh. We don't force a person to get married. Bizman Azeh. She can't have children. There's a Kana, Katana. We won't say you can't marry her because he desires her. Because of her money. So in other words, if you mitzvah Pirivya, we should say you shouldn't be able to marry such an individual. Even though al pi halacha you should go ahead and be meicha, right? Nonetheless, for many generations, our must says we're not medagdik in this. Even someone who marries a woman and they live together for 10 years, we do not noig. This is the halacha. We're not noig legarsha. Even though he's not going to be kaim rivya. The chaim b'shar in yonei zevugin also. This is a rivash simetesvav ubevad shleitehei asura lav. So if she's not asa, if she's asa, then we'll force the divorce. The rivash says in that simetesvav that it would cause tremendous havoc in the world. It would cause tremendous. So many people don't have children together. It would cause tremendous upheaval. And he has sources that would appear to go connected the Gemara that seems to say you would get divorced. Right now, in the old days, if you could have two wives, not a problem. Right. This Gemara, why is the Gemara say kaifin? I saw you kaifin. I said, why don't you take another wife? Right? I don't know. It wasn't. I told you it was not so common to have two wives. It was not. People think it wasn't. I brought a raya from Rus and Boyaz, right? You're Rus. Rus was a Panuya and he's a Panay. Even if it wasn't a Panay, he would be permitted to Rus. But you see that it seems to be that's not something that was commonly done.
Rus didn't know who it was. If it was him, the problem was with him or with her.
Again, it's irrelevant. He's Mitzvah Perivia. So I was my Chavrusa today, and my Chavrusa told me his great grandfather had married a woman, and they were together 10 years, and the Rav, they were in Europe, and the Rav told them to get divorced. He married somebody else and had children. She married somebody else and had children.
Wow.
Sometimes, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Right? Your great grandfather?
Yeah, but I had two wives only because the first one couldn't have children. She married another wife. There's no chance. Exactly your solution.
Right.
She had two children and passed away. And then the original wife raised this.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
Mordechai and Esther, both born on Purim. My grandmother Esther.
Oh, Benji.
Where's the son, huh?
Yeah, so she come from a weird family.
Weird white man.
Okay, the rest of the Gemara is fascinating. We're gonna discuss Mukach Shchen. The worst one of this Shchen is something called Mukach. It seems the following. It seems like Mukach Shchen is very hard in Tashmish. It's very hard to have marital relations. And the worst one is called Rason. And it seems Rason is some type of organism that goes ahead, a parasite that invades the body. And the Gemara is going to describe how to get rid of it. And in this discussion, we're going to have the most bloggable blog of all time, because it was going to have brain salad surgery. We're going to have, in the time of Chazal, they did brain surgery. They actually were able to open a cranium and do surgery. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I do have an article here just to get stuck because these are very strange words. Okay, says the Gemara. So Amar Rabbi Yossi. So says what? Says Rabbi Yossi. What does Rabbi Yossi say? Amar Rabbi Yossi. Sachli Zaki Necha Mianshe Yerushalayim. Asara Esrim Va'arba Mukesh Shchen. There's 24 types of disease that we go ahead and identify as Mukesh Shchen. The Kulu Omer Chachamim Tashmish Kasha Lehem. And all of them, they say that Tashmish is very, very difficult for them. All these diseases, Tashmish is very difficult. Right? Ubale Rason Kushamikulan. And the person who suffers from this disease called Rason, that's the most difficult of them all. Okay? That's the most difficult of them all. Memahave, has a person contract this disease. The Tanya, Hikis Dam, if a person bloodlets, the Shimush, and he lives with his wife and impregnates his wife, Havle Bonim Vasikin. You can have children that are weak. Hekizu Shneim, if both man and woman do Akaza, the Shimshu, and they have Tashmish, Havile Bonim Bali Rasan, then the children will suffer from this disease. So Amra Papalea Morin that they contract this disease, Eldle Toya Midi, if they don't eat anything from the Akaza and the Tashmish. Aval Toya Midi, if they eat something between the Hakaza and the Tashmish, then less lumbar. You don't have to worry about contracting this disease. My simaneho, what's the simana of this disease? How do you know you have such a disease? It says dolphine neha, the eyes they tear, v'doive nechire, and from the nose, the nostrils, there's constantly liquid. V'aisi le rira mipume, and the mouth is always drooling. Uremu didve ilave, and the flies always flying around them. Flies flying around them. Now, umay asuse, what's the cure? This is fascinating. Amra Abaya, you take pile veladna, I don't know what that is, type of things that grow. Gira the egoisa v'girda the ashba, you take the bark of a nut tree, and you take a piece of a hide, the shavings of a hide, uklil malka, a lily, umitachle the dikla sumaka, and the stuff that covers red dates that are not ripe. The shalak luhu bahadi adada, you boil them all together. Umayule lebesa the shisha, you put the patient in a house of marble. houses of marble are notorious for being wind-free, because again, you're going to open up this person's skull. You don't want any wind carrying it. That's the sterile environment of the time. A house that has that the marble house, a marble house. The Eloi ikabesa the shisha. If you don't have a marble house, ma'ilolei lebesa the shav livnei varicha. Go into a house that has 7 bricks and a half brick wall. So if brick is 3, it's 3 tvachim, so it'll be 22 and a half. You take this concoction that you cooked up. Again, don't try this at home. We learned the famous Ma'aril that all the things that the Gemara, first there's a change of teva. Second of all, we don't know the ingredients. So therefore, if you try it and it doesn't work, you may come to question the Chazal. So we don't know the ingredients, we don't know the amounts, we don't know the change of teva. But again, this time, guys, this is not be made mishnayos. This is the time of the Gemara. And what do? You take that potion and the not the late class meya kisel. Throw 300 times in the head. 300 is a guzma. It's always a guzma of the Gemara. It's a classic lashon of a guzma. You do it ad the rafia ar isei the moicha until the cranium, the skull gets soft. Then you open up the skull. You open up the skull, and what do? Umaisi arba tarfe de asa. You bring 4 hadassah leaves. Umadle kol chad karo umoisiv chad. You lift up one leg and put the leaf underneath it. Again, what you're worried about is the organism taking its claws and putting it in the brain. So you put a leaf underneath it that is a separation, a barrier between the legs of this organism and the brain, right? V'shakol tzvasei, and you take it out with the tongs. You pick it up, the kole, and you burn it. The Eloi, because if you don't burn it, hadri lave, it's going to come back to him. Fascinating. I find it fascinating. Again, I guess, and then the classic brain salad surgery for those of Bekias fame, right? Now you understood what I meant. Okay. Now, Michris Rabbi Yochanan, now this disease was very contagious. Rabbi Yochanan made a hachrose that his hiru mizvuve shel bali rasan. Be careful of those flies, because they can go ahead and spread this horrible disease. Rabbi Zera loy habi Yosef bezike. Rabbi Zera, he was careful not to go ahead and sit where the wind would possibly blow. And again, it's amazing. They knew that to carry disease, right? Yeah, they knew that this is well before. What? This is well before bubonic plague, well before the Middle Ages, guys. And he seemed to understand that wind could go ahead and carry disease. What? Rabbi Lezer ayol ba'alei. Rabbi Lezer. So Rabbi Yochanan was makman on the flies. Rabbi Zera was makman on the wind, and Rabbi Lezer, he didn't go anywhere even near the living quarters of these people. Rav Amir Ravasi. This is a gedolei amaroyim lehavi achli mibeya dahi mevoya. If there was eggs from that mavoy that this person said, they didn't eat it. So in other words, you have these great Amoraim, the biggest Amoraim, being very, very careful to stay away from this. I'm emphasizing that because the next piece of Gemara. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was a different type of guy. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, michrich bahu, lashon of koirach, like a sandwich. He mamish clung to those people. The osik b'toira, and he mamish learned Torah. He would teach them Torah. Amar, he said, ayeles ahavim v'yales chein. He said, Torah is like an ayeles. It's like a deer, and it has a lot of chein. Im chein ma'ila alam deha. If Torah gives chein, agudile magda, don't you think it's going to protect you from this disease? So he mamish. So in other words, it's fascinating. He did not only stay away. Now, who would you think is right? Rav Yossi, Rav Ami, Rav Asi, Rav Yochanan. I would say they're right. And that's, guys, we have a rule like this. Shluchei mitzvah ain't in the zukin, but b'mokum there's a sakana. If you have a vadei sakana, then you have to worry. We learned that out from Shaul. When Shmuel went to anoint the king, Hashem told him to anoint one. So Shmuel says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shaul's going to kill me. So you see, shluchei mitzvah in the zukin, not b'mokum sakana. So how could he do it? So Rabbi Chanan asked the kasha. Rabbi Chanan asked the kasha, the Kavos Shurim on this Gemara. How is it possible for Yeshua ben Levi to put himself in a makom sakana? We don't say shluchei mitzvah ein nizukin, that people go to do the mitzvah won't get harmed if there's vadei sakana, and with disease is vadei sakana. Good. So it says Rabbi Achon, tremendous kiddush. In Cain, you see that we say shluchei mitzvah ein nizukin is not except with Torah. Torah has the capacity to protect you. Torah is different. To teach Torah would be different. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, he was samech upon this, and as a result of this, you see HaKadosh Baruch Hu treats him differently than any other person in the history of the world. This is a very famous Agartha. Ki Avishachiv, when it came time for Yeshua ben Levi to die, Amru lei lemalach hamaves zil avilei reusa. Let's go get him, but do whatever he wants. So Azal is Eschale, the Malach HaMavis came to Yeshua ben Levi. Yeshua ben Levi was always busy with Malach HaMavis. Throughout Shas, he's busy with him. So Amalei, Achvilei Duchtoi, Yeshua ben Levi said to him, take me to where I'm going to be. Take me to Gan Eden, where I'm going to be. He wants to know where he's going to be. So Amalei Lechai, so the Malach HaMavis said, okay. Again, Malach HaMavis can't say no. Hashem told him to do whatever he wants. So Amalei, Yeshua said, Levi said to Malach HaMavis, Havli Sakinach. You know that sword that you use? you know that thing that you carry around with you? Let me have it, right? Dilman obviously borcha. Maybe you know what? I'll look at it, I'll get scared, and I'll die, and after all, anyway. So Malach HaMavis had no choice, right? So Yoav Nelei, when he gave it to him, again, he had no choice. Kimat lahasam, when they got to the Gan Eden, where he's going to go, Dalia Kamach, the Malach HaMavis lifted Yeshua Levi on the wall, because he wanted to show him his place in Gan Eden. Shavar Nafalahu Gisa, Yeshua Levi jumped to get into Gan Eden. Nakdi Bekane Dil Bimed. Malach HaMavis was holding on to the corner of his cloak. So Amalei, Bishvuasa Dlayasina. Yeshua Levi said he made a shvua that I'm not coming back. Now the Malach HaMavis had a problem. He wanted to get Yeshua ben Levi because he had a job to do. On the other hand, right, Yeshua ben Levi made a shvua. Some Kodesh Baruch Hu gets involved. This is obviously, don't take this literally. Itchel Ashavua Nahada. If Rabbi Shua ben Levi ever had gone ahead and made a shvua in his life, right, then bring him back. Eloi Nahada. And if he never made a shvua, right, then don't bring him back. Meaning, even if he made a shvua, he would have been made for it, right? But he's saying no. No, it's if his mouth was so kaddish that he never went ahead and made a shvua, then leave him. So Amalei Halbi Sakinoi. So Yeshua ben Levi never made a shvua, and guess what? He's a Gan Eden. So the Malach HaMavis is stuck now because he needs his tool to the trade. He needs his tool. He needs his sword. So like Havi Koyav, Yeshua ben Levi said, no backsies. You're not getting it back. You're not getting it back. So Nafik Bakala. So Abaskal came out, but Amalei and said, Havnele, give it to him. He's got a job to do. The mitzvah libriyasa. We need it. We need death in the world. Okay. Machaz Elio Kanei, when Yeshua ben Levi now is in Gan Eden alive. So Elio Novi also managed to get in there alive. Panu Makom Levar Levoy, go make a place for Bar Levoy. Panu Makom Levar Levoy. He was announcing that. Oz Lashka of Shimon Yechai. Yeshua ben Levi found of Shimon Yechai. The Havis Yosef al Tlas Eser Tak to say Pizle was sitting on 13 chairs of gold. Amalei Atu Bar Levoy. Rav Shimon said to him, are you Yeshua ben Levi, the son of Levi? Amalei, yeah, I am. So Neras the Keshes being Mecha, was that a Keshes ever seen in your lifetime? Amalei Hain, it was. Same Cain, at the Bar Levoy. You're not Bar Levoy. Meaning we know this Keshes is a sign that a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants to destroy the world, but he's keeping the bris that he made with Noach. We know by Yeshua Shimon ben Yechai, a Keshes never appeared in his lifetime. That's why by Lag Ba'omer they used the bow. Because in other words, even though Hashem would want to have destroyed the world, he doesn't have to show it because the schus of Shimon Yechai would have saved the world. So therefore, he's saying, you're about Levoy, you want to sit over here? He goes, if you saw a Keshes in your lifetime, then you're not deserving of this. But it wasn't true. He never saw a Keshes. He never saw a rainbow. He didn't want to go boast about himself. So therefore, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was being very, very, how should we say? He was being very modest. Rav Chanina bar Papa Shusvina Have. He was a friend of the Malach HaMavis. Again, whatever that means. Rav Chanina bar Papa was a friend of the Malach HaMavis. I could choose another friend. Kiavika Nafshi, when it was time for him to die, So Amalei Malach Hamavis, he told Malach Hamavis, listen, do me a favor, right? He said, go. He said, they told him Malach Hamavis, it's time for him to go. So Ozl Gabe, he saw him. Amalahu, so Rabbi Chinina Papa said, listen, Shafki till Siyum, give me 30 days. I should go ahead and be able to go ahead and learn. The Ami Yinshi, how fortunate is the one who comes there, so I should know it. So Shafki and Malach Hamavis left him there. The Bustle, I heard a beautiful some seif on this guy. This is a beautiful some seif. Only a person who doesn't have Talmidim to say over his Torah has to ashmi shabala count with the biyadai. But a person who has Talmidim, who always going to repeat his Torah, then sfasav daivas bekeva. His lips are always in the grave saying over the Torah, so it's unnecessary for him to count Talmud biyadai. So this is only the some sefer. So now he's 30 days later he shows up, and Havlis and Amalei. So Amalei Malcham says great. So Amalei, so Rechina Papa said Malcham, listen, Havlis Sakin, so give me a sword. Dilma Masisli Borcha, you're going to scare me, I'm going to die. So Amalei, listen, I'm not falling for this again. Malcham said, I can get fooled once, you can't get fooled twice. So Amalei, you want to do like your friend Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi did to me? Amalei, Rechina Papa said, no. I see Sefer Torah v'chai. Bring a Sefer Torah. Me and see me. You can meet the Ksiv Beit like Kiyamta. Is there anything there that I didn't keep? Amalei. So the Malach Hamav said to him, "Me ikrachta b'bali rasan v'sasik b'Torah." Did you stick to the people who rasan learn Torah? You think like Yeshua and Levi? You see, that's the whole reason we brought this in. An unbelievable thing. Now the Gemara tells it's an unbelievable thing. Yeshua and Levi, how selfless he was to give of himself out for Torah. Selfless was put himself in sakana for Torah, like that. It also explains Rabbi Kiva, guys. Rabbi Kiva, right? The Roman said it's asa. He starts teaching Torah. How can you do that? So if you fish out water, you're going to be dead. Yeah, but halachically, how can you do it, right? And the answer is the Torah is going to protect you, right? That's with that Rabbi Chana, the answer is a hard question, right? It's a hard question. Now, even though Rechina Papa wasn't zeicha to go into Gan Eden alive because of what? Because of not being taken care of by Rason, Hinoach Nafshe, when he did die, obviously Amud the Nura being Didei Alma. When he died, a pillar of fire separated him from everyone else. They weren't able to bury him. Ugemiri, there was a Masorah like Mafsik Amud the Nura, El Chad Bidara or the Tre Bidara. A person was zeicha to this, only one or two people in a generation are zeicha to this. So it speaks volumes about the greatness of Chanina Bar Papa. Don't make a mistake to think that he wasn't teaching the Bali Rasan, so he wasn't zeicha to Gan Eden alive in any shape or form. It took away from his greatness. I mean, he didn't have that schus of teaching the Bali Rasin, but nonetheless, he was so great that in his generation, there's one or two things that appeared. So Karav Lagabe Rab Alexandra, he wanted to bury him. He said, listen, go ahead, get rid of this column because the covered chachamim. You're making us look bad. You're zeicha to this, we're not zeicha to this. And guess what? This pillar of fire and listen. Asa b'shvil covered of yichadu for the sake of your father, Papa. Boy, Ashka didn't listen. Asa b'shvil covered atzma do for your covered, and then that would happen is stalik that the fire went away. Amar Abaya afuke mimand loikoyim. The fire separates this person from anyone who didn't fulfill the Torah as much as he did. Amar le'avada b'masna lafuke mimar. Does it come to exclude what of you Abaya? Le'islei Michael le'igra, because you don't put a mica around your house. So it wasn't true. But you kept the Torah. What happened with Abaya? Have a hobby. There wasn't a mic around his house. But he shaita who shad Yazika. Fire came along and it knocked it down. Chanina, they ma'ain bali ras in the bubble. Why wouldn't have people in bubble suffering from this terrible disease? They sha'oichlin trodin v'shoisin sheicha shel hizmi. They eat beets and they drink beer that's made from the hops that grow on hizmi, a type of thorns. Amrav Yechanan, if they ma'ain mitzroyim bebavel. Why am no mitzroyim bebavel? They sha'oichlin trodin. They eat beets v'shoichin sheicha and they drink beer. And they drink and they take baths in the Euphrates River. On that note, Hajj Lecha Amad Es Ishtay, Hajj Lecha Amad Es Ishtay, Hajj Lecha Amad Es Ishtay.